Good day, everyone. Welcome to another edition of The Hub. I'm Nestor Lecanto. Today I'm joined by attorney Vanessa Williams, who is the legal counsel for the Democratic Party.
Morning.
We've got Dr. Ron McNinch, of course, a good friend of ours from the University of Guam, and another good friend of ours, Shawn Gumataotao, former colleague here at KOAM, representing the Gumataotao campaign, senior advisor.
Sure. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody.
All right, so let's get the discussion started off. I wanted to talk about political fundraising, the climate for it. The incumbent has the benefit of having known all along that they were going to run for re-election, so I imagine that campaign war chest is pretty big. In addition, they got the windfall of the multi-billion-dollar federal funding that you could consider part of that political campaign war chest. And then Governor Camacho got, I believe he came in a little bit later than typical. So let's start with that. The climate for political fundraising. How do you assess that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll say with the ARP funds, they're very strictly regulated by federal law and guidelines. So that definitely isn't part of the war chest, so to speak. But the Democratic Party of Guam, they've always been the big tent party. They're the party for working families. They fight for increases in minimum wage, access to housing, and really greater equal opportunity for all. And so recognizing that, they know that right now Democrats understand that people aren't really concerned or thinking about donating or making political contributions. They're worried about, how much is inflation going to continue to rise? Are we going to be able to afford things? So that said, dollars are sparse. We know that. And I think Democrats are really working hard to stretch that dollar a lot further. We see that everything from campaigning to fundraising is really going digital.
Yeah, and Shawn, how has the economic climate been for trying to raise money for the Republican side?
What's interesting is that with a person who is kind of not an incumbent, you have the kind of the benefit of the largest cabinet in the United States, right? With the current administration, and that's pretty much the way for most of Guam. You have also maybe 1,000 plus unclassified folks who are also supporting it. When you don't have that, it makes it very challenging in terms of trying to reach to others for dollars. And so most of it's going back to the supporters. A lot of volunteers are coming forward, a lot of low dollar perhaps, but then what we're finding is that most of the contributions now, they're seeing like, well, how can we help to, we're up against a big machine. How do we get past that? With no primary, it's a little bit easier, but as we're prepping for the general, at least as the last couple of weeks are showing us, it's getting more and more, I guess call it winds at our back, and monies are now coming in, which is, who would have thunk, even in this economy?
When Governor Calvo was here, our last show, he mentioned the fact that there would be some assistance from the National Republican Party.
Right. What
kind of assistance? Is there going to be some monetary donations for the campaign?
My understanding, yes. It was part of a process to help write kind of like the new plan for the party. And so, yes, there'll be monies for polling. There'll be monies for getting out the vote primarily. And so, which is good. Because in the past, the Republican Party or the National Republican Party hasn't given a lot of funds to Guam. We'd have to pretty much rely on all of our traditional donors, and obviously the big Republican stalwarts are just giving money to help push the agenda. But this is kind of it's a new time for us, and so we're very excited about the Republican National Committee giving money back to Guam, which is awesome.
And you had the national chairman out here too.
That didn't hurt, right? Yeah, and so local Republicans are seeing that, hey, the RNC is taking a serious look at what's happening here in terms of what kind of resources they can give, and just asking, and which has been absolutely supportive. And actually, that's what kind of helped spur writing, kind of new plans for the party, and well, it's going to equal dollars, and that's good.
Ron, Shawn alluded to it that there is no primary challenger to the Republicans. Is that help or hurt? Should they hang on to their money and start spending it closer to the general election, or how do you see that?
Well, if you're talking about the governor's race, it's odd because in this particular race, all three of the gubernatorial candidates have off-the-shelf earned media. We have a sitting governor, we have a sitting delegate to Congress, we have a former governor. At any point, any one of them can just hang out a shingle to the media and get free media. So that's one advantage, at least from the governor's race side. And so it's a lesser thing. I have been, I've mentioned this in other times too, a little bit concerned about how we do the primary and how the primary dynamics are going out because of the large number of crossover votes in the past that have really disrupted the Democrat side of the ticket. So like 1998, 5% of people voted Republican, 95% voted Democrat, and they totally disrupted the Democrat race. And so when the Democrats spend money in the primary, they have to spend money because of those really weird dynamics that go on. On the one other thing I mentioned to everyone, on the senatorial side, of course, the incumbents have earned media, but any candidate with well-spent money can get themselves elected to the Guam legislature under $10,000. It's not as toutedly high as people claim it is. And we measure this by the number of amounts of funds that people raise per the number of votes they get. And it's very, very clear. Some candidates have to spend $7 a vote, and other candidates can spend 30 cents a vote. And there's really no real connection between the amount of money a candidate raises for the legislature and the approach they use to get themselves elected.
How difficult do you think it will be for Mike Nicholas and Sabrina to raise money for their campaign?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but he does have the because he's the current delegate, he does have those advantages that come with being the current delegate, just as the governor has the advantages of being the current sitting governor. And so I don't know, though. I haven't really given that a lot of thought. And then there are all these other dynamics that are unresolved related to all of these races that's currently everyone's talking about on both sides.
Right.
And so I think both of y'all could probably compare notes and see you believe in similar items like that.
Yeah. Vanessa, Ron brought up media. So I wanted to see what you thought about traditional media and versus social media, which is where it's headed. I tend to think, and I might be biased, that the traditional media is still very effective, radio and TV. What are your thoughts on that in terms of getting the word out in a campaign?
I think traditional media is still effective, but I think that's a credit to how traditional media outlets have integrated with social media. And I think you cannot underestimate the power of social media, because you got to remember most adults now, or at least half of them, are digital natives. Gen Z, they're parents. Millennials, we're pushing 40, or we're 40 already. So, and we, as digital natives, we understand and we kind of speak the language on social media and can really see through the lines and through some of the spin and assess the credibility of people who are campaigning on social media. So it is pretty powerful. Plus you have that organic growth, and people see something, they like it, they share it, and those are endorsements. You have influencers in every other industry, and now you're seeing influencers in the political space.
Yeah. Sean?
I said it on this air, I've said it multiple times throughout the last cycle. I mean, if you saw what happened with in the last delegate race when Dr. Underwood, who ran probably one of the most textbook campaigns ever, he lost because of social media primarily. He did the door knocking, he raised money. Delegate Nicholas didn't go anywhere near territory. He had a lot of great images of ice cream eating and popcorn serving, and won twice. So we cannot discount the power of social media when it comes to political campaigns, because pretty much all of us saw it firsthand, that even the best ground game could not be a social media game that was pretty much, we've all felt it wasn't untested, but it was a big deal.
Okay, I'm going to get to you, Ron, but we got to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of The Hub. Don't go away. All right, welcome back, everyone. When we left off, we were talking about social media versus traditional media. I want to get Dr. Ron's input on that.
Yeah, the other day in class, one of my students said, "Wow, my skills are like boomer level," and I'm like, "What boomer level?" They're like,
"Hey, boomer."
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and so suddenly I've realized that there's like this view among young people, generation that they use. It's kind of interesting, but I think in general, skills are adaptive right now, and people everywhere are learning how to use these technologies. And people are learning to interface with these technologies in different ways. But I have to say, for Guam, nothing beats beats us sitting right here talking to each other in person. And you'll see that at fiestas. You'll see that at these individual levels. And so I agree that Mike did a great job on the social media side, but I think that because of COVID, people have a deep down yearning for that personal face-to-face talk. And I think that's going to make a big point in this election.
You know, I asked my students last semester at ULG, because I teach communications there, and I asked them, where do you get your information from? And 99% of them all said they got it from social media. They did not go to your newspapers or we're on KUAM, the other radio stations. They all said they get it from social media, and I was like kind of stunned for a moment, because I asked that question every year for the last decade, and it's progressively used to be a newspaper, used to be a television broadcast like KUAM, and now it's completely almost all social media.
Ron touched on it, and I wanted to just get there real quickly. Pocket meetings, still important, critical?
Well, yes, but then when you look at it today, remember, politics is always about a game of addition. So when you start seeing at these things now, are there the same people, or are you bringing more people? So today, right at this moment, at least in our case, we probably won't see any of those until probably the general. And I think that they are still important, but they come at a heavy burden to people who are hosting them, the campaigns that are trying to get the word out. It's big cost. And hopefully the yield is going to be absolutely votes.
Yeah. Vanessa, what do you think?
Oh, I think pocket meetings are absolutely still important, because this is the flip side of social media, right? You have some candidates who only use social media, and they filter what they'll respond to, and really now you have this ethical concern about your transparency, or whether you're really fit for the job. Can you respond on the fly and have a genuine, authentic conversation with someone? And so when you have pocket meetings, I think you see a lot of familiar faces at these pocket meetings. I'd say about half, right? But then you have the other half for people who are genuinely interested and want that face-to-face time. So, for example, if you look at the sitting governor's team and their pocket meetings, they invite all of the candidates, and any Democratic Party candidate, even both that are running for Congress, will have spoken at the same pocket meeting, and they get that face-to-face time, not only the platform, but then they can speak to the half of the people are there and have a genuine conversation. And from there, you have a multiplier effect. This was that you have on social media, which amplifies, when you do it there. But at the pocket meeting, you get like 50 or 100 new faces, and they go talk to their cousins and their aunties and their grandmas at the kitchen table, and then you get the word of mouth out there. And people really want authentic,
And Ron, I don't mean to make you the MSN representative here, but he's had the cotton candy thing that he's been doing.
Sure. I think that novelty is always good, but you see what he's doing when he's doing cotton candy things is he's getting kids excited, so then the kids talk about their parents. One of the key things I don't see candidates do a lot here, and we'll see this election, candidates now can get individuals to take selfies with them, so then you have the synergy of the personal connect to the social media connect. And so there's a lot of neat opportunities, and he did some of that with the cotton candy effect. That is, he encouraged people to take selfies with him, which then translated into more social media hits, which then translated into more people talking about these things. So it's a kind of interesting, a novel approach. But I think that the key thing is good candidates are going to look for these novel approaches, and they're going to try new things, and not just relying on, my name and people know me. That doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Wanted to talk a little bit about how national politics influences local politics, if at all. And right in your wheelhouse, Vanessa, the big issue nationally has been abortion.
Yeah.
What is its impact here?
Well, you've seen the impact here. It was literally cut and paste from Texas, and here we are. And really what has become a dominated party of Trump, the Republican Party. And so you have some Republicans who I suspect may have gone rogue and grabbed a couple rogue Democrats, and they introduced this bill. So unfortunately, we still have a lot of Guam listening to the national conversation. So yeah, I think it's really infiltrated, but the response, ultimately it's Guam voters who vote on it. The response has really been local. So you can see the disconnect there, because when you had you had senators who sponsored and had a hearing on the bill that was cut and paste from Texas that was anti-choice, anti-abortion, you had like 80% of the testimony against the bill. And we're talking 1,000 people submitted testimony. And so over 800 were against it. So I think that the parties, it would behoove the parties to understand, that maybe right here on the ground isn't following the national conversation all the time. And we don't necessarily need to follow the national political playbook to address what the current needs of Guam are. When you have just real crisis for women and children here right now, the highest poverty rate, infant mortality rate higher than any other state in the country, and women and children more likely to be abused and assaulted than anywhere else in the country, or like second highest in the country.
Okay, I got to squeeze Shawn in here because we're running out of time. But we have a clear distinction here. The Governor Leon Guerrero clearly pro-choice. Governor Camacho clearly pro-life. I think MSN and Sabrina are split. I think Mike said he was pro-life and Sabrina is pro-choice. What kind of an impact is that going to have?
Quite frankly, I think the national discussion on it is probably less important than the current economy. I think that most of us will say that when you look at what means the most. I don't have my wallet right now with me, but if I had it, I can show you. It is the pocketbook issues that have become the most important issues for the community today. In America, yes, of course, that's also the same. And the whole issue of life and choice is somewhere around third or fourth priority. But we have to remember as a community that those are important because it's going to impact locally, right? What happens at the White House will trickle down to the state for the most part. And I think we've seen it throughout the pandemic. We've seen it with a lot of the programs that have been launched with a Democrat-led Senate and a Democrat-led House and White House, obviously. But yes, it should, but I think community needs to be understanding it more today.
Okay, I'm told we got to take one more break, so we're going to do that, and we'll be back to wrap up the show right after this. Don't go away. All right, we are back with the last 5 minutes. So let me start with you, Ron. Congressman Michaelson Nicholas did his speech. A lot were saying that was more of a campaign speech than a State of the Congress address. What were your thoughts?
Every speech any candidate makes, regardless, I don't care how far away the election is, it's a campaign speech. And so I think that, and people are going to make any kind of political angle they want to out of it. He's going to promote best thing ever, and his opponents are going to promote worst thing ever. So that's pretty much how I viewed this speech, and the time really didn't matter, and even the content didn't matter for the most part. It all deals with how people translated it. And people will translate these things in different sorts of ways. It doesn't even matter what the reality of any elements of the speech were. It's all in how people perceived and translated. All
right, 90 seconds, Vanessa, your reaction.
Yeah, I think a lot of people perceived it, including myself, as a lot of finger pointing, which was a little disappointing because, but you get that with every election, right? You have all of the Monday morning armchair quarterbacks who are like, okay, this is what I would or should have done, right? But at the end of the day, there are people here, including myself. I'm raising my two small girls. I'm just, they're growing up quickly. I want to know, what are we going to do right now? What are the solutions? Let's stop with pointing the fingers. Tell me how you're going to solve the problems. I want specifics, and to just say, oh, we're going to do better, or look, we need to take Guam back, or we need to do, revive something. No, I want to know, going forward, what are you going to do today so that the life for my kids is going to be better 10 years from now? They're going to have more money in their pockets. They're going to have more choices, and they're going to have more opportunities.
And you don't think he did that?
Huh?
You don't think he did that in his speech?
No, absolutely not.
All right, Shawn, 90 seconds.
I'll just say this. I've helped write 8 State of the Island addresses for a former governor, and I expected a lot from his speech. I think he let a lot of people down, this whole entire community, with his approach. I think that the speech did not address his major issues that he covered, because quite frankly, if you would have known about it for the last 12 months on this air, on other platforms, print, we would have known those. So all of a sudden, all this work came out. We're like, oh great, that's good that we know it now. No, it was absolutely I wasn't a very big fan of the speech. I thought his approach was terrible. I think Vanessa's right that he pointed his fingers too much, and I think that just not what we expect of our delegate to Congress. I think it was just a bad speech.
Okay, we do have a couple of minutes, about a minute left. So let me ask you, there was a photo on the Governor Camacho's Facebook page with former Senator Frank Uggan. Does that mean Frank Uggan is supporting Governor Camacho?
Yes, I think they were waving this morning somewhere else in Guam. I think that maybe Adolfo Palacios too was at a function last night that said, "Hey, by the way, we're supporting Guam and we're supporting the Republican candidates." I think that it's getting that groundswell of support from different folks across the entire spectrum, and yeah, it looks like an endorsement to me. And I don't know if you guys drive by Jonia. The big sign that's on his
That's
property.
a little out of the way for me, but no.
Yeah, but yeah, it's also kind of telling, right?
At his property, yeah. Ron, you've been saying this all along that the Democrats are their own worst enemies at times. Come these elections, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have a very interesting Democrat Party here, but we also have some interesting Republican dynamics. This is a really fun election, especially if, like me, I'm just interested in watching to see how these folks battle things out. And there's a lot of little battles going on here, and you can see it when you start watching for it. And even some of the things Shawn's saying, it's a battle among the Republicans. Some of the things that Vanessa's saying is a battle among the Democrats, and then they have their mutual areas that they contrast with. So I think this is going to be an interesting election.
All right, Vanessa, you're going to get the final word. What is your thoughts on the impact of Frank Uggan Jr. kind of?
That's what I love about the Democratic Party is we're the big tent party. So we have people from all walks of life who passionately disagree on some things. You're seeing it right now on the choice issue, right? But at the end of the day, what Democrats want is to make Guam better, and equal opportunity, dignity, access for everybody, and really support the working class and working families, so we know where their hearts are.
All right. With that, we're going to close out the show. I'm Nestor Licondo. That's Attorney Vanessa Williams, Dr. Ron McNinch, and Shawn Gumataotao. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week on The Hub.
Let's go, Brand.